This is the John Oakley Show podcast.
On a great day for talk radio, insofar as, these aren't really great days, and especially so if you're locked in a case of isolation or quarantine with an abusive partner. Laura Paris is an associate lawyer at Shulman Partners LLP, and they've been reporting on this, so we've got Laura joining the Oakley Show this afternoon. Laura, good afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
Very good. I'm kind of curious because, this whole phenomenon, and we hear that there have been increases in domestic abuse, which kind of follows reason, but do we have any verifiable stats that show us there's been an increase?
Yeah, so there's actually been a statistic produced by the York Regional Police that has indicated that domestic violence calls have increased by 22% since the COVID-19 measures have been put in place.
I see. And so as a consequence, have there been any protocols put in place to address the increase?
So my understanding is that the Trudeau government has contributed about $40 million into a fund for women and gender equality in Canada. And the purpose of this is to allow the provinces to invest more resources into ensuring that there are sufficient shelters and additional resources available for people who are facing domestic violence at this time. What you will find is that even in regular times, sometimes we do see, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, you do see a shortage in women's or men's availability to shelters. So it seems as though this relief fund that has been put in place by Trudeau is going to address this issue specifically. I've also read that like hotels and et cetera are trying to be used and converted for these purposes exactly.
The question, though, is how fast the money gets into the pipeline, or does that matter now? It's just a case of increased shelter space and the money will follow that. How is this working?
I think that's the hope in this. I think that at this point we kind of need everybody to band together, and some of it may be being done sort of on a good faith system where open your doors to us now and we'll make sure you're compensated for it later. I'm not 100% sure as to the exact metrics of how exactly this is being put into place, and I'm not sure that all provinces have decided exactly how they're going to be allocating these funds, but certainly it has been addressed as an issue. And it's something that is being looked into to ensure that these resources are being properly allocated and that these victims are being able to use these resources to put themselves in a safe space.
Again, with Laura Paris, associate lawyer at Shulman Partners LLP, just talking about the impact of coronavirus on domestic abuse. And while there's been abuse reported, or at least a spike in the stats by the York Region Police, I'm kind of curious because typically with a domestic call, police will take one of the parties, usually the abuser, and in most cases it's the man, out of the home. Are they still following that practice, to your knowledge?
So, in this case, I think that they have to modify that practice. I'm not 100% sure as to what protocols are being put in place, and I don't believe that there's anything official that has been mandated in terms of how to address these situations. What I imagine may be happening is that if there are alternative options available, places that people can go on a temporary basis, they're recommending that. But given the self-isolation measures, it may be something as small as, asking someone to stay in a basement and not kind of leave the basement until things have settled, or just trying to find ways to divide a household in a way to kind of maintain these safety barriers. But it's hard to say. We're trying to find creative solutions at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it doesn't sound like removal is an option then.
It depends, right? It depends how people are dealing with these self-isolation measures. If and whether or not you have someone who may be willing to put themselves at risk to take you into their home. So again, it's really a matter of trying to be solution oriented and trying to find these creative solutions while also ensuring that we are following this protocol and not adding to the spread of the disease. So it's a bit of a virus. It's a bit of a fine line and fine balance to find.
Yeah, I've even heard stories of, warring couples or divorcing couple having to maintain the domicile and still be in close proximity to one another because there's no other option. Now,
absolutely.
I was going to ask as well, there has to be some practical response, though. You're saying pretty much asking somebody to quarantine within the home if it's an abusive situation. I don't know where the honor system really plays a role, but are there other ways to stay safe for somebody who's being abused?
Well, definitely. I mean, getting yourself out of that situation is probably going to be the best thing to do, and that's where these shelters and ensuring that these whatever resources are coming to us are being properly allocated to make sure that people aren't trapped in their homes because of this virus and putting themselves into, we're staying in our homes to keep ourselves safe. If your home environment isn't safe, it's almost defeating the purpose of these measures. It's just opening you up to a different type of issue. So really, I think what's going to be crucial at this point is ensuring that these shelters are available and that these resources are being properly allocated. The other thing is, I mean, if you do have someone that you can stay with and someone who's willing to take you in, and trust that you've been following proper self-isolation tactics, there still are court options available. So if you are able to just get yourself out of that situation temporarily, you are able to. Something like domestic violence would certainly qualify as an urgent issue that would get you before a judge and perhaps get you an order for example, exclusive possession of a home to ensure that you can stay in the home safely with your children, if there are children involved. And then the other individual would have to, look into alternative options for housings for themselves until the situation can be stabilized.
Yeah, and we're hoping there are enough resources for hotline response. I even hear in France, for example, pharmacists, if you've gone to the drugstore, there's a code word that you can use to say you're in a domestic abuse situation, and then whatever response kicks in from that point. So these are all practical considerations in an extraordinary time. Laura, I want to thank you very much for giving us an overview of where the situation rests with the impact of coronavirus on domestic abuse. Stay safe, stay healthy. You got it, Laura Paris. Yep, associate lawyer at Shulman Partners LLP.
Thanks for listening to the John Oakley Show podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe for free at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your on-demand audio.
Hey Toronto, this is Sergi Baka. You've probably been hearing a lot about staying home recently. But how can you stay home if you don't have one? Fred Victor is helping the homeless during these difficult times, and they need your support now more than ever. Until April 30, the Sergi Baka Foundation will match every donation up to $100,000. So help the homeless by donating today at fredvictor.org.